What's up, everybody? Mark with Targett of Vexed Academy here. And you know what we haven't done in a long time? We haven't done a co-reaction in a long time. And the reason for that is because, you know, it's funny. When there was a child that entered my wife and I's lives, I was like, oh, yeah, I'll just film when he's napping. That was a lie. And so these are much, much harder to schedule. So I'm very excited. In just a little bit, we'll be pulling in Megan Target, the vocalist of Vexed. We'll be pulling her in soon. And it's going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be a lot of fun. We've never talked about Vexed on the channel outside of like announcing guest judges for our super cool competition. But real quick, the part that y'all love to skip, it's okay. I do it too. Listen, when I tease y'all for that, I do it too. So don't worry. But my name is Mark. I am a vocalist, a metal vocalist in a metal band called Kardashev. We're on Metal Blade Records. Neat. Also, I am a metal vocal coach. My full-time job is teaching people how to do cool sounds, you know, stuff like safely and efficiently for years to come. And on this channel, I play music and pause a lot and talk about it. So that's what we do. And if you like it, like, share, and subscribe. And if you don't like it, dislike, share it with your friends, talk about how bad it is, get us those clicks. Love you lots. Bye. Now, that's pretty much all I have to say about the matter. I didn't get much sleep last night because I was like doing like little baby feeds. So I'm feeling a little spicy today, as you might be able to tell. But let's go ahead. Let's just get into it. Let's go ahead and pull in our guest, Megan Target. Awkward YouTube pause. Commence. And wow, look at the magic of YouTube editing. We've got Megan floating up in the upper right corner. Megan, how you doing? How you doing?
Hi. Yeah, I'm really good, thank you. How are you?
I am doing well. I'm perpetually exhausted, but I appreciate you making. I know that I appreciate you making this time slot work. I know that Alex, my business partner, he reached out and he was like, "Yo, this is a time." I think what did he reach out to you like 2 days ago? Was it?
Yeah.
So thank you for making time on such short notice. So
I really appreciate it. Like I've been binging your guys' videos for ages, and as soon as Alex was like, "This is the day," I was like, "Right, it's gonna happen. Gonna make it work, no matter what."
Hell yeah, cool, good. Well, I really appreciate that. I appreciate the views and the kind words. Now I'm excited as well because I had heard of Vexed before, but one thing about me is I'm really bad at exploring bands because my life is listening to music here, listening to songs that my students submit, or writing music. So sometimes at the end of the day, people are like, "What do you listen to?" And I'm like, "Fucking nothing."
Yeah, I'm the same. I'm the same.
It's totally thing. But when we were lucky enough to get you on as a guest judge, I was like, you know what, I want to go. There are a few people here who like I'm not super familiar. And I listened to y'all's most recent album, and it's awesome. It's really good. I love we're going to talk about this song. But I love obviously the vocals. I love the energy. I love the aggression in them. I also love like the interplay between like bounciness, but also like in the music. There's like this bounciness, almost like kind of proggy approach, but still like metal and very, very heavy. So I'm excited to see what's happening here. And that's actually a good segue. What should I expect? With the current track here?
So it's very different to anything that we've done before in the sense that with the first album, I mean, like bands always say that, and then you hear it and you're like, it sounds exactly the same. This is awkward. But with our first album, like even though we do love it, we've completely outgrown it. Like I think we were trying like really hard to, I don't know, find ourselves, as cringe as that sounds, but we were still figuring it out. And then I think when we wrote our last song, we figured it out, but it's a bit late then. You've got a whole album of songs where you're not quite sure. So with this album and like the songs that have just started coming out, this is us like be recognized, and yeah, it's exciting. It's different. I hope you like it.
Well, I'm sure that I will, because that's the other thing about me is I'm really able to, even if I hear a song where it's like not something I love, I'm always able to recognize musicianship. I'm always able to recognize good talent and things like that. So, but I don't know. I liked every song on the album, so I'm pretty sure I'm going to like this too. This is the other thing too. This is something most of the time when I do these videos, I ask if there are any details about like the subject matter or what the song is about, or if they want me to go in blind. So it's up to you. Almost everybody makes me go in blind, but it's up to you. Because you're part of the reason I ask you this as well is because your vocal style is fairly articulate. You know, you certainly do know how to sound like angry and monstrous, but you also know how to like make your lyrics audible through your screams. So do you want me to go in blind and try to like piece it all together, or do you want to give me like a basic overview of what like the I always cringe to say like message, because sometimes we're just writing music for fun. Not everything has to be like this deep message. But what do you think? Insight? No insight?
Oh, what would you prefer?
What? Well,
Do you want a little bit?
See, here's the thing about me. I'm a lazy piece of garbage. So anything that makes my job easier, I'm down for. So a little bit of context.
Okay.
I'm always a fan of that. I'm always a fan of that.
I'll give you some context.
Okay.
So I was raised hardcore Catholic, and I, within the last couple of years, have lost my faith. I've stepped away from it. But I do believe that everybody should have the right to practice and, you know, believe in whatever they want to believe. However, when you get people that capitalize off religion and try and make laws about people's bodies and say who we can and can't love, or try and, you know, take money off the vulnerable, that's when I've got a problem with it. So that's what this song is about, is that faith is a beautiful thing and to have it is wonderful, but don't try and take advantage of other people from it.
Gotcha.
That's the message.
Interesting. Interestingly enough, I usually don't talk about my background too much on the channel, but as another person who, you know, left the church, as the phrase goes, left the church, as the phrase goes. For me, that was a while ago. I think I was like 19, so that'd be, I don't know, whatever 35 minus 19 is. The schools I went to weren't very good, apparently, but it's interesting because I left a church called the Seventh-day Adventist Church, and one of the main things that many Seventh-day Adventists, not all, but many Seventh-day Adventists believe, was that the Pope was the Antichrist. So, like, what's up? Yeah, we would have back when we were both into it, we would have been duking it out. But
oh my God, we could go down some rabbit holes, but let's focus on music.
I'm with you there. I totally agree. All right, cool. So let's go ahead. Let's check out "X My Heart, Hope to Die" by Vexed. Here we go. Okay, I'm already going to pause it because there's some really cool stuff that we can already talk about. There's some really cool stuff that we can already talk about. So my first question for you is, why the CRT TV? And the TV static, like, you can't see it. Well, you can see it. The people on YouTube can't see it, but I've got a CRT right back there because I've got all these retro games. So when I saw that, I was like, oh my God, I miss my childhood. But like, I am kind of curious, like, why that versus, maybe it's because it's more iconic, but why that versus like a more modern television?
So I am like obsessed with like old school R&B hip hop music videos. And I feel like the queen of that is Missy Elliott. And I was a 90s baby, grew up in that scene. And I remember era. And I remember having one of those TVs in my bedroom. And so it is just kind of like a bit of nostalgia, but it's also kind of referencing to the whole like brainwashing cult thing, glitchy, static TV, and also referring to like those sick hip hop Missy Elliott music videos, which I love.
Sure. I know exactly what you're talking about. I know exactly what you're talking about. Okay, well that makes a whole lot more sense. To get like, especially like that vibe with like the like brainwashing thing, you couldn't use like a flat screen with like an input not found.
Exactly.
Like that wouldn't work. Okay, so obviously there's a lot that we could talk about with your voice, and usually like at the first pause, I like to focus on like just one thing. One thing you're doing that I think is really cool and kind of impressive is the way that you are flipping up between like lows, higher mids, and then highs, all within like the same words. Like, your syllables are, cross my heart and hope to die. And one thing that's really hard for a lot of people, and one thing that a lot of people come to me for, is being able to actually do just this transition from a low to a mid or a low to a high. And that takes a lot of vocal tract relaxation. So my first thought is, that's really, really cool. Is that something that kind of comes naturally to you? Or is that something where you're like, through your vocal journey, you're like, hey, this is a really cool sound. I really like to do it. I'm going to work on it. Or did you just kind of click someday with that?
Annoyingly, it did just click. So like, I know that's not the answer people want. So it's hard because like when I go to try and explain it, I'm like, I don't know, I just do it. But when I like the last couple of years, I've tried to really focus and actually think about what I am doing with my vocals, because I spent a lot of years just screaming and shouting and not actually paying attention to what I was doing. Yeah. So now I can kind of recognize that, I'm actually doing a big throat shape. And then when I go higher, I'm bringing it more to the front of my mouth, and I'm basically just relaxing and then restricting. I say restricting, it's not really restricting. I just can't think of another way to describe it. But yeah, so now I'm trying hard to kind of learn more about the terms and learn about the techniques, because when people ask me, I'm like, I don't know, I'll just shout.
Well, and
but yeah,
that's a really good point too, because, I think in the past, like 6 to 7 years, I think it's become kind of like cool to know about metal vocals. Because when I was first starting metal vocals a long time ago, it was like, I don't know, man, I just get on the mic and scream. And that was seen as like cool. That was seen as like the aloofness to the technique was kind of like, at least in my area, was kind of cool. But now, like knowing terms like false chord, fry scream, arytenoid, soft palate, all these things is much more popular, and these terms are much more used by people of all walks of life, not just vocal teachers, right? So in your process of learning more about your voice and saying like, okay, what am I actually doing? What am I actually performing here? What are some of the things about your voice that you learned? Because I think one thing that really is such a huge moment for any vocalist is when they learn about their voice as kind of like a part. I'm trying to think of how to say this really cool. But maybe I'm overthinking it. So I'll just toss it to you. What are some really cool, what are some things you learned about your voice that you didn't expect?
So I learned that it sounds so stupid and basic, but like you were saying, you get all these douchebags when you're younger that are like, I don't need to warm up. Like I just go on stage and I scream and I'm metal you learn that that's a load of crap. You have to warm up. You have to take care of your vocal cords. You can't just be out drinking every night and eating loads of pizza and dairy and stuff. Like if you want to be on form and at your peak level, you have to treat your body with respect. So that is something that I learned. Whenever we're touring, I am on my best behavior. I barely drink. I'm constantly needing the loo because I'm drinking so much water. And eating healthily, or trying to. And so, I learned that, you do need to warm up. You do need to respect your body, your vocal cords. And then breathing. That was like the epiphany moment for me, I think was learning and being so like ultra aware of my breathing. Because I'm severely asthmatic. I have to take 4 puffs twice a day. And it's a lot. Like apparently I have the lungs of an 80-year-old. So I have to really be careful because anything can trigger that off and I'll just have an asthma attack. So learning how to like really control how I inhale, exhale, and just make sure that I'm getting enough breath has almost come of a bit of an obsession. I think that's why I love doing the fast, rapid vocals, because I've learned how to hold on to my breath and release it and keep my lungs full. And not get to the point where I'm like having an asthma attack on stage.
Yeah, totally. And you say hold on to your breath, and I think that's you mentioned two things there that I think are really important for so many vocalists, is that oftentimes when you are a vocalist, old or new, right, and this may have been your experience, and you're saying to yourself like, okay, I'm going to learn proper breathing. What you do, and this makes total sense, is you learn the steps, right? Great, awesome, as you should. But then you also have to learn that your body is not anybody else's body, and you have variables that other people don't have, right? Like for you, it's the asthma, right? For me, it's you have the lungs of an 80-year-old. I've got the heart of an 80-year-old. You know what I'm saying? So like for me, it's like, okay, like I can bear down on my support, but I can't put too much pressure in my chest cavity. So I have to, think about these things. And so I think that's one of the things, like if I could like inject any wisdom into like new vocalists, it's like all of these steps, all of these courses and things like ours coming out soon. They are really good guidelines, but you got to remember that it's your body at the end of the day. And so I'm actually really glad that you mentioned that, because that's something that a lot of people have to navigate. And then, you talked about holding on to the breath. That's a really important concept too, because, as like I've heard your voice in that karaoke event that we had in the Discord server, but also just when we were doing sound check before this. And one thing that I think is really interesting is that the vocals I've heard from you, at least one-on-one, they're very false chord based, which is a very like inherently like breath heavy vocal style. And so that's like an interesting dichotomy to get, like holding on to your vocal to your airflow while still doing these big growly vocal styles. Was that something that was hard for you? Were you like running out of breath a whole lot, and then eventually it sort of like started to feel a little bit more balanced? To like, how long did it take you to feel like you had control over that airflow?
It took a long time. Like it was almost like as if like my lungs were a muscle and I had to like weight train, because my lungs are naturally weak. So I had to start training them and like get better at literally being able to take in deep breaths, because as an asthmatic, you're not using as much of your lungs. And so I had to learn how to fill my lungs and then slowly release it whilst doing a scream. And I've never been able to do like vocal fry. I can't do that technique. I've tried, but I just can't. So false chord was like the natural thing for me. But of course, like you said, it requires a lot of power behind it. And so it was like, well, I want to do these vocals. It's the only ones I feel like I can do and I feel comfortable with. So I'm going to have to build up that sort of metaphorical muscle in those lungs. And it takes a while, you have to really push them, but you have to do it over a long period of time, because otherwise you're just going to pass out. So it took a long time of like just getting some strength in there, and not being mad at myself, not like trying to rush it, because again, everybody's body is different, and I knew that my lungs were my weakest thing, so it was going to take time to build it and strengthen it.
Yeah, I mean, likening it to the process of weight training is really quite valuable, because a lot of people, they think, oh, I'll just breathe in and my belly will expand and then I'll be able to be like Ollie from Markspire. And it's like, well, it's going to take longer than that.
I wish it was that simple.
Me too, I'll tell you. Well, that's actually a lot of really great context for your voice. So let's listen to more. Let's listen to more of X My Heart here. And now all of you lovely viewers, having that context, can think a little bit more critically about the vocals going on here. Super cool. All right, here we go. It's too late. I can't be saved. My soul is damned for the devil to take. If you ask me, what do I believe in, all honesty, it's a cast of browsers. Each comes perspective and a hunger for knowledge, but the more I consume, the more I know nothing. Stuck in a cycle of repentance and struggle, but when I haven't done wrong, then why should I suffer? My point is, I'm open to being wrong or corrected, but when faced with the same thing, no, you won't accept it. Cross my heart, hope to die. Okay, I want to pause it there, because I know I'm pausing a lot, but there's stuff to talk about. First and foremost, I'm really interested in your experience of grit on your voice? Because what I'm hearing in your voice and what I've noticed about your voice in the past is that the distortion sounds very, very well, TV staticky, right? A lot of times when people think about false chord, right? A lot of times when people think about false chord, they think about that really low, rumbly, like that really like sort of clacky, like type of sound.
Yeah.
And with you, you've got a lot more like dither's not the right word, but just like this sort of sound. And some of that does come from like the natural shape of our vocal tracts, right? But other parts of it come from certain, you said restriction earlier and you were like, I don't want to say restriction. But like sometimes that's kind of what it is, right? Certain strategic like restrictions or constrictions of the vocal tract above the vocal cords. So my main question is like, first, what does the distortion feel like to you? Where do you sort of feel that gritty feeling in your vocal tract? And then second, when you're screaming, do you feel 100% relaxed through here? Or do you feel like there are areas where there's like maybe like a bit of squeezing in the very back of the mouth, the top of the throat, things like that? There's a lot of, that's a lot of questions, but that's what I'm curious about.
It's okay. So for me, the way I get that grit, I don't think I ever used to have it as like prevalent in my voice, but I've been working on it a lot. And the way I've been sort of doing it is I've been gargling. And so
really,
yeah. So I've been obviously with my asthma and taking inhalers, I have to gargle a lot. Otherwise you get all the stuff in your mouth and you get mouth ulcers and stuff. So I've been plugging back my Listerine and sort of that kind of shape that you make when you're gargling and keeping that in your mouth is how I get that sound. So yeah, instead of it being like, do you mind if I do a vocal?
No, please.
So instead of it being like, can't stop process, which is like quite, straight, I do that sort of thing that you do when you're gargling, and it's can't stop process. It's like, that gargling thing.
Yeah. Totally. That's interesting. I have like used gargling with some of my students to like just kind of explore like steady like airflow when like they didn't have a cup or a straw to like blow bubbles, and I was like, okay, but I've never thought about using that to kind of like play around with the generation of distortion. And I like sometimes I feel like I've heard it all when it comes to like exercises and techniques, but that's a new one. I've never thought about that, but it makes sense. I totally see what you're saying. And so does that cause you to feel the majority of that grit when you're screaming? Like, and I could be wrong here, but that makes me think that you would feel the majority of that grit kind of like straight back in the mouth, maybe a little higher, or do you feel it kind of like lower rumbly in the top of the throat?
It depends on if I'm doing lows, mids, or highs. So
sure.
If I'm doing a low, you're exactly right. If I'm doing a low, I feel it here. If I'm doing a high, it's very much at the front of my mouth. And a mid is sort of in the middle. So I think depending on where I'm doing it, almost pitch-wise, that's where I tend to feel it. But I don't ever feel any strain from it, because even though I'm doing that sort of shape with my mouth, which you would do when you're gargling, I'm still opening up my airways. So it's almost like the throat's doing one thing, the vocal cords are doing one thing, but the mouth is doing another. Yes.
And that's one of the things that like I always, on the rare occasion that I'm speaking with somebody who doesn't like metal vocals, because like I just like, my parents have learned to just accept what I do. I'm kidding. They're very supportive.
Aww.
They're very supportive. But on the rare occasion when people are, and they're genuine, they're not asking this question in bad faith. They're saying like, but is it just like screaming? And I'm like, well, that depends upon the technique. But even so, not really, because we have to do these very acrobatic movements. And the thing about it is it's all internal, right? It's all internal. Yeah. So yeah, it can be like these isolative, like muscle movements. They can be kind of tricky. Now, oh man, my brain did the thing where you said a thing and then I had a question. Oh yes. So you said you don't feel any strain. That's awesome. Did you feel strain when you first started doing vocals, or are you one of the lucky ones, which I was not, which you just started and like pain and strain's never been an issue for you? That does happen for some people. It didn't happen for me.
Those people are horrible. I hate those people. Yeah, I of course I did. Like, I was doing it wrong for years, and I think it came down a lot to came down to nerves. Because if you're in a rehearsal studio or playing a show and you haven't got in-ear monitors yet, you're just, you've got a microphone and you've got a monitor to hear yourself through, but you can't really hear yourself. You just go, right, I've got nothing to lose, just scream and shout, and it'll sound quite good and it's really distorted. But when you actually stop and take time to really hear yourself, and like, we're on in-ears now and I can hear myself to like a disgusting level, you can hear that, like, oh yeah, that's why that really hurts. Like, I'm literally hurting myself here, and you can hear all the inconsistencies and the bad bits. So I think it took me a long time of just hiding behind volume and thinking that everything sounded good because it was loud and it was making a horrible noise.
Yes.
To then actually be like, no, you need to really actually listen to what you're doing because it was hurting. Mm-hmm. And the second I quietened everything down and really listened and didn't hide behind volume, it stopped hurting. Really did.
That's one of the most important things, I think, for not just beginner vocalists, but any vocalists is to like, obviously we have our goals, we have our vocal goals. I want to sound, this way or that way or whatever. But those preconceived notions of what our vocals should be, they can really get in our way. They can because they can cause us to self-teach way off track. And I know that that's what it was for me as well. I had the same thing. It's really common. I thought, like, I had to be as loud as possible. And so one time during practice, we had another band hanging out with us, and they were a little bit more established in the local scene. And I was like, oh,
so you got to be cool.
I had to be cool. And what did I do? I just took a deep breath and I shoved as hard as I could. And I had to take a full month off of this is about 2 years into my vocal journey. And that for me was when I was like, okay, maybe volume's not all it's cracked up to be. And now, like, most of my mids and lows are not too, they're a little louder than my speaking voice, but not much. Cool. That's awesome. Well, let's keep going unless you have anything else you want to add.
Oh, no, let's keep going. I'm excited for you to hear it.
Props, but also no props for adding that brief clip of Kenneth Copeland. I'm going to have nightmares now because that man's awful.
Yeah. I'm sorry.
I was like, ugh, but contextually it makes a lot of sense, but ugh.
Yeah.
Anyway, I could talk bad about him, but he doesn't deserve any of the time.
I know.
Here we go.
No, he doesn't.
Cross my heart, I hope to die. Stick a needle in my eye. Cross my heart and hope to die. Not knowing what's on the other side. Cross your heart, prepare to live. In case your sins you won't forgive. Cross my heart and hope to die. Without the meaning to my life. Cross your heart, prepare to live. You're not sacred, you're corrupted. It's too late. We could be saved. Our souls are damned for the devil to take.
Okay. That was cool. A little like shing. That's interesting. Okay, so I have two questions. I have two questions for you. Well, maybe three. I don't know. I'm just gonna. So the first thing I actually want to ask about is lyric writing. One thing I'm hearing a lot of like schoolyard rhymes, like cross my heart and hope to die, stick a needle in my eye, things like that. Was there like is that kind of a link to like you mentioned, you grew up one way, and so like you think about your childhood, and so are those like kind of schoolyard lyrics, which always reminds me of like Korn or something like that. I always thought it was cool. But I guess I'll just ask you more broadly, like the inclusion of that, was it just because it worked with the lyrics and it sounds cool, or was it like, oh, I want to hearken to a specific time or a specific emotion with these schoolyard kind of rhymes?
So for me, it was a bit of both. Like, When it comes to writing lyrics, I'm a big like hooky kind of writer. I like to come up with lines or phrases in each song that will make the song memorable. And then usually the verses, I'll go to the nitty gritty stuff, but like I'll always try and find a hook that's catchy. And so Cross My Heart and Hope to Die is a nursery rhyme that we used to say a lot in school because it's a Catholic school, and obviously it's Cross My Heart and Hope to Die. It's about the Trinity. Yeah.
we were saying that all the time too, but I never stick a needle. Whoa, this is getting weird. I'm sorry. Keep going.
Yeah. If you go look up the whole poem, it's literally about Christianity. But it's one of those things where you say it as a kid and you don't know what you're actually saying. You think it's just a rhyme, which is why I wanted to put it into the song, because the context is, you know, people don't really know what they're doing or they're saying or what they're believing in. They follow blindly without asking questions. And so I wanted it to kind of refer to that. Cross my heart and hope to die, stick a needle in my eye. You don't know what you're saying when you're a kid. But yeah, it actually refers to the Holy Trinity. So that's where that came from.
I mean, and here, I was saying, like, you know, we did that. We said that all the time. That's like
crazy, isn't it?
That's like Ring Around the Rosie. If you look into the origins of Ring Around the Rosie, it's like dark. It's like sad.
No.
Okay, and then the second thing is one thing. I want to make a comment. The vocal hooks make a lot of sense. So if anybody's watching this video, and this is your first time hearing Vexed, that's one of the things that I think y'all are very, very good at, not just vocally, but instrumentally as well. There are a lot of moments that sound like it's a good hook, but it's not like canned. It's not like heavy-handed. You know what I mean? Sometimes you have bands where you're like, you know, you hear like this isn't so popular anymore, but it was like super big in the early 2010s, and we all just got kind of sick of it. It was the dum 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 bing, and like everybody in the car is like bing, and you kind of predict it.
Yeah.
I think you all have really, really done a good job of creating hooks without everybody in the car, you know, completing even though they've never heard it before. So it's like, if you're watching this video for the first time, you should go check out Vexed. But another thing I kind of am interested in is obviously your embouchure, the shape of your mouth is changing, but I would say predominantly you're a very open mouth vocalist. Your lows, of course, you know, you're doing some of that. And I think that's kind of an interesting choice, because now feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm shit when it comes to genres. I would not put you guys like in the deathcore camp. Although there are certainly some crossovers, but one thing I'm noticing is that because deathcore is like dominating right now, a lot of vocalists in non-deathcore bands are starting to adopt more deathcore vocal styles, and you are reminding me a lot more of like well, some would say Fit for an Autopsy is a deathcore band, but listen, it's a complicated world. But you're reminding me a lot more of like Joe with his wide open embouchures, and you're going for that like big wide shape. Is that just like a stylistic preference, or is that easier for you, or a little bit of both?
So I'm not, it sounds really weird. I don't listen to a lot of metal music. Like my favorite kind of music that I listen to on the daily would be rap and grime, and hip hop and R&B, things that are like really fast paced. So I love writing heavy music, but when it comes to like lyrics and vocals, I like doing things that are fast and rappy and different. So I had to try and think of a way that I could incorporate both things, and is most comfortable for me when I am doing sort of like that open shape.
Sure.
I like to do silly little raps. So the only way that I could do it without like losing my breath or running out of steam was to just keep doing it the way that I feel comfortable, which is with that sort of open throat, and kind of the throat's doing one thing, the mouth is doing another, and just adapt to try and make it work, really.
And, you know, the articulation is going to be much stronger as well. And that, you know, if you're trying to do these like really fast paced, you know, rap inspired sections, which is interesting. Another vocalist we've had on the channel who is also very inspired by rap and hip hop is Johnny Chardulo from Carcosa, and Angel Maker. But and that's kind of like a crossover that's becoming more and more common is metal vocalists who listen to more rap and hip hop than they do metal. As for me, like I'm kind of similar, except rather than I do really, really enjoy hip hop and rap. And I'm going to ask you about that here in a second. But for me, most of the time what I'm listening to is if I'm listening to music at all, it's either like soundtracks. Like one of my favorite soundtrack songs ever is for a show I've never even seen. It's the like main suite for Downton Abbey. I have no interest in that show.
Wow.
It looks boring as hell. But that song, it gives me chills every time. So it's either that or like really like old like Americana, like a banjo and like, you know, somebody like hitting their knee with like some spoons. Like give me that, and I'm
like bluegrass and stuff.
Oh yeah. It's like I'm totally into it. But I do actually really enjoy rap a lot as well. Although I probably don't follow it quite as much as you. So for our audience, if you were to suggest some rap artists, maybe somebody off the beaten path, because we've all heard of like, you know, Eminem, and we've all heard of like Dr. Dre and all these people. Who are some people that you would suggest that are maybe a little bit off the beaten path?
One of my favorite at the moment, she's called Ash Nico.
Oh,
I don't know if you've heard of her.
Yeah.
She's more of like a alternative pop rap. It's like a bit of a crossover again.
Sure.
But she's amazing. Rico Nasty, it's so cool. She's like absolutely filthy rap and grime, and she does a lot of really fast raps that she's shouting in, so it almost sounds like she's screaming, but she's not. She's literally just mad and she's just shouting. And it was a big inspiration for the album, actually, just her pure aggression. So yeah, I would say Ash Nico, Rico Nasty. Yeah, they're my top two. They're my top two at the moment.
For sure. For me, I've been obsessed with Toby Nwigwe. Like I listen to his music and I can't find a single song I don't like, and especially when his wife features in him. It's Toby Nwigwe, and his wife's rapper name or whatever is Fat. And they're cool. And they'll be like doing music videos, and they're like, you know, standing in a circle, and they've got like grills, and you know, and they're doing a rap video, and they've got their kids, and their kids are like, you know, doing stuff too. And like, I love it. And the music, and not only that, it's like the music is so good, and the lyrics are just unreal. So yeah. Anyway, so yeah, if you listen to metal and you don't listen to rap, you should check it out, because there's a lot to learn, especially about breath support and rap. Holy cow.
Definitely. Yeah.
All right. I'm going to go back a little bit, because it sounds like we're getting kind of like a cool like thing coming up here. So I heard like that sword draw or whatever. So here we go.
Yes.
This should be good.
Cross my heart and hope to die, knowing I stood for what is right. 'Cause if we're all equal in one image made, what gives you the right to decide who is saved? What if I don't want to be?
All right. Oh, wait. Okay, it's just Napalm's thing. The Napalm videos, I always think there's more, and then I'm like, no, it's just their outro screen. So there's a lot. There's a lot going on there. Like I'm so glad you told me about like the like Missy Elliott and like the like 90s era like R&B and hip hop, because like that made this section of the music video so much better, because it's got a metal vibe. It's dark, it's moody, we're getting flashing lights, but then all the people around you, they're and like, if I'm using the wrong terms here, people will let me know. But I see like hip hop dancing around you. And again, this is a really good example of how I think you all do really well creating like hooks and fusions that aren't so heavy handed, because it wasn't like, hey, we're just going to slap some hip hop dancing in this music video and that'll make it cool. It's blended in. It works. It's not like, so just kudos to that. If that was your idea, that's just a really, and I wouldn't have really noticed that without that extra context. So that's really neat.
Thank you.
So before we talk about the section where like the metal came back in, which was awesome, I want to ask you what the thought process, because like you've got like a sword being drawn, you've got some tongue clicking, right? There it is. Some tongue clicking. That reminded me a lot of Hereditary, which is a great
terrifying
movie.
film.
Terrifying. Like I'm sitting here and I heard that and I'm like,
yeah.
No one's getting sacrificed to Payman today.
Yeah.
But yeah, so talk to me about like that. Like what's the thought process behind the tongue click and the sword draw and all these things?
So we really like kind of like sections in songs that bring in that kind of, I don't know, trappy, grimy, more modern element, because we do listen to mainly rap and grime and garage music. Like we listen to things that aren't metal a majority of the time, that we did want to start blending it into our stuff, but obviously you have to do it carefully, otherwise you just end up sounding dumb. So we were playing around with stuff for a while on the guitar and like using synths, but it just didn't feel right. It just felt way too like over processed. So when I was in the studio with our producer, I was like, I'd really like to just make something with my voice. And so I just went into the booth and did loads of breaths and clicks and just making horrible noises, basically. Like poor him, he had to sit there and listen to me making like horrible ASMR noises. And then, we just, like put it all together into like a bit of a rhythm with a click track, and then put some subs under it, and then we just wanted to make it sound eerie and scary and almost have that kind of like church vibe, where it's like it feels like you're in a cold big room and you can hear a pin drop and you can hear people breathing and we wanted to just make it sound creepy and daunting as hell. And it's like my favorite bit of the song, to be honest.
Well, I think you nailed the creepy bit. One thing that's cool about art is that people put their own experiences in it. So I'm going to tell you exactly what I thought. Given the context, I'm seeing like these like, televangelists, and I'm saying like all of these very like Protestant images, right? These very I can forget what I was going to say, but one of the things that's really popular, I don't really know much about Catholicism, so you can tell me if this was a thing or not, was the armor of God and the sword of the Spirit, right? That was like a big thing. Like the Bible was the sword of the Spirit, and you put your faith is the armor of God and stuff. And like, that's really kind of weird if you think about it. Like this kid's 6 and you're like, okay, you're going into battle. And the kid's like, oh, I don't know what I'm fighting, but I'm scared, I know. And so like when I heard, I remember when I was in school, I used to do this thing called sword drill. Right, which is where you hold the Bible up. Yeah, you hold the Bible up really quick. You hold it above your head, and then, man, it sounds so weird when you talk about it. Like,
it's mad, isn't
20
it?
Years later.
When you talk about it out of it,
it's so weird. And you hold the Bible above your head, and then the teacher calls out a Bible verse, and then you find it as fast as you can. And the first one to find it like wins the sword drill. Like that's the thing we did. So for me, my first thought, given the context of this video, was like, shing. Like that sword drill. And then immediately after that like Hereditary tongue click, it's like, I thought that was kind of cool because it's like, sword drill, Jesus. And then it's also like corruption and demons, like because of the Hereditary thing. So it was really, really very, very cool. Now, anything else you want to add? Because I'm just running right now.
No, you got it spot on. Like it was the same growing up in a Catholic sort of schools and family. The amount of like murder and fire and flames and death and swords and stuff that you're just brought up around and it's completely normal is crazy, to be honest. So the use of that was something that was intentional, and it's amazing that like you've picked up on the televangelism and stuff as well, because I'm obsessed with like researching about sort of cults and religious extremists and stuff like that. So I know so much about it, but the boys in the band, when I got all those clips together, they have no idea who these people are.
Yeah, wow.
So because again, it's like it's a world that they just weren't in. Yeah, it's cool that you've picked up on that, because not many people do.
I think admittedly part of it though is I don't know, people might get a little bit spicy with me here. But I think part of it is that, like, you know, I don't know that this is like exclusive to the United States, but like religion is everywhere, you know what I'm saying? So like I feel like those images, like, especially if you live in the South. I don't live in the South, I live in the Southwest. But it's like you know who the televangelists are, you know, like and it's just like a very religiously charged country. So I think that's part of it as well. Anyways, I could go off on that on a tangent, but I won't. But you know, the next thing I want to ask you is, and this is actually much more simple, and then this will kind of be all I have for now. This is a little bit more of a straightforward, like, vocal question. And I always like to ask these types of questions because these are a lot of questions I get from my students, right? And you having all this experience, I think that for those of them watching, this will be pretty good. Which, you know, between lows, mids, and highs, which ones were easier for you and which ones were harder for you across like your vocal journey to learn?
I would say my lows were the easiest. I don't know why. I just always felt lows were the most comfortable and easiest to do. I think for me, the mids were the hardest.
Really? Interesting.
Because, and it's weird because you'd think that would be naturally like the easiest thing to do, as it sort of seems to sit on your speaking voice almost.
Yeah.
But for some reason, I don't know whether it's the asthma or just the way my body is, but the mids were always the most difficult, and highs were pretty okay as well. Like, I think I've naturally got quite a low speaking voice for a girl, so lows were easy. I'm a girl as well. I can go very squeaky and high and like my normal talking voice, so that was quite easy. So just sort of finding a natural mid, quite difficult. And again, I had to kind of build up that metaphorical muscle to get there. But once I got there, it's fine. It's just as easy. But to start with, I was definitely one of those vocalists that was just all the time.
You know, actually, that given the context that you've provided, that actually makes a lot of sense, right? Because false chord is an inherently breathy-er vocal style. I always emphasize that because people will think that false chord is supposed to be super breathy, and that's the case. But compared to fry or to like true chord phonation, right, it's inherently breathier. And so on a low, we have some partial occlusion of the vocal tract, right? We've got our lips puckered, ooh, sometimes our tongue curled, and so that can kind of like mitigate and like control air pressure. On highs, we often have like a wide embouchure and our tongue sort of lifted and pulled in the back, and that actually can provide some occlusion as well. On a mid, it's open and go, ha, right? So, you know, with asthma, that would make, well, even without asthma, you know, false chord mids can be, that's where I start everybody. Well, not everybody, but anybody I'm teaching false chord. And that can be difficult to avoid just like dumping all your airflow. So that paired with asthma, that actually makes a lot of sense. And then this is the last question I have for you. And then you're free to add anything or whatever. We're just hanging out, but you know, a lot of my viewers and a lot of my students are brand new. I'm not really sure why, but we always tend to attract like really new vocalists, which is actually a lot of fun. I've come to find that between like experienced vocal lessons and new vocal lessons, I prefer the new vocalists because there's just so much we can do. You know what I mean? But what advice would you give to new vocalists, because it can be so confusing? There's so much information out there, some of it good, some of it bad. As somebody who has done this and taken the time to explore, you know, your own voice, what piece or a couple pieces of advice would you give new vocalists to help them on their journey?
I would say it's without sounding cringe, it's not going to be easy. It is a journey. You have to take things slowly. You can't expect to watch a few YouTube tutorials and be the best vocalist overnight, because it is a true skill. And no matter how much my grandparents or my friend's mum thinks I'm crazy because I'm just screaming into a microphone, it's actually really difficult. So don't give yourself a hard time. Take your time. And then I'd also say that, you know, go looking for people that know what they're talking about, like yourself. Watch videos from people who actually have the right to say they know what they're talking about. And just try and do your research about your body. I spent years just ignoring it and hurting myself. But the second that I learned, oh, right, yeah, that's what's happening. That's why it's hurting. It made things so much easier. So take your time, do your research, but then also remember that your body, your voice is not going to be the same as your favorite singer or your favorite vocalist. So try and copy, just try and be your version of the best, if that makes sense. You know, I've always wanted to sound like particular vocalists, but it's never going to happen because I'm a girl and, you know, I have my own set of vocal cords. So yeah, just remember that you're not always going to be, I'm rambling now. Yeah, just remember that like it's a journey. Do your research, and you're not going to be exactly the same as everybody else. You might differ on things, so just find what works for you. You can edit it to that.
Now we're listen. People have been around enough to know that if you don't want to hear rambling, you don't watch Carter Vox Academy. Like that is just that is just the thing. You know, and kind of building on that, I think, you know, it's so important to know that like a new vocal journey should be mostly like explorative. You should mostly be seeing like what does my voice do? What do these different vocal positions feel like, rather than being like, I have to get this specific Freister. It's like it's cool, like you're saying, it's cool to have like goal, but explore your voice, take your time, work slowly. And hell yeah. Well, to send us off, why don't you plug Vexed? Why don't you, you know, anything people need to be looking out for? Where can they find me in these days? It's all the same platforms basically. But yeah, plug your band. Go for it.
Thank you. So we are releasing our second album on the 23rd of June. It's called Negative Energy. It's coming out on Napalm Records. So if you want to hear a mad woman screaming about how much she hates life, go look for that album when it comes out. And yeah, thank you to anyone who bothers to listen, and just enjoy. And you can find us on any platform just under Vexed. Standard stuff.
Perfect. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Megan. I appreciate your time. I appreciate you. You know, if I just listened to this song, I would have liked it. I would have been like, hey, this song's a bop. This is really cool. But having you kind of explain what it's about, your motivation, your background, it really made it a lot cooler. And I know that a lot of people who watch the channel are gonna think the same. So thank you so much for being here. Greatly appreciate it. And
thank you for having me. I was so pumped when you guys asked me, because
hell yeah. Well, thank you for your time and kind words. And with that, as always, many thanks, much love. I'm out.